80 men. That number shouldn't matter to history. But in November 1274, 80 samurai forced the most feared empire on earth to hesitate. The Mongols had crushed China. Korea had fallen. Armies did not stall. They erased resistance. And now, their ships were sailing toward Japan. This wasn't myth. Japanese war chronicles and Mongol imperial records both describe the same place, the same date, and the same stand. Tsushima, 1274. Before Kyushu, before the mainland, storm would break first on a small island in the Strait Tsushima. Preparing for this invasion began years earlier. The Mongols, masters of horseback warfare, faced a weakness, the sea, so they borrowed power. Korean ships, Korean sailors, and Chinese engineers. The fleet that sailed in 1274 was not just Mongol. It was an empire stitched together for conquest, carrying soldiers, horses, siege weapons, poison arrows, explosive fire weapons Japan had never encountered. Japan had no standing national army. Defense rested on local samurai bound to their lands. When invasion threatened, they gathered where danger loomed most, Kyushu. Stone walls rose along Hakata Bay, an unprecedented act of preparation. But Tsushima stood alone. Tsushima's governor, S. Sukekuni, counted his strength. 80 mounted samurai men trained to ride and shoot since childhood. Alongside them, 300 islanders, fishermen turned defenders. It was not enough, lest the land itself could fight. Tsushima offered no retreat. Narrow beaches, steep mountains, dense forests. Sukekuni turned those limits into a trap. Watchposts crowned the cliffs. Signal fires waited. Hidden paths replaced roads. The island became a maze built for ambush. When enemy sails appeared, torches ignited. One flame became many. Fire raced along the ridgeline faster than any rider. Before the Mongols landed, Tsushima was already awake. On November 4th, black and red banners filled the horizon. Korean war drums thundered. Ships formed a crescent. At the center, Mongol transports packed with armored troops. Beneath them, gunpowder ships waited. Aboard the ships, the invaders prepared weapons the Japanese had never faced. Black ceramic bombs packed with fire and iron, rawhide shields, poison-tipped arrows. War had evolved beyond single combat and honor duels. Japan was about to meet it for the first time. 700 invaders advanced, shields locked. Then one arrow flew from the cliff. Sukekuni's signal, the forest answered. Arrows poured down. Samurai charged from hidden paths, struck, and vanished. Pits shattered horses' legs. Logs rolled like thunder. The invaders couldn't see their enemy, only feel them. The Mongols advanced in blocks. Samurai fought in fragments. Hit, withdraw, reappear. In the mountains, discipline without vision meant nothing. As reinforcements approached shore, Sukekuni gathered his last 80. One charge, one shock. Horses thundered down the narrow beach. Steel met steel. Half the samurai fell. Sukekuni still stood, arrow buried in his chest, sword locked in both hands. The enemy pulled back. Night came. The invaders returned to their ships. Signal fires burned southward, toward Kyushu. Tsushima burned, but it had done its duty. The Mongols had landed, but they had not broken Japan. And next stood Iki Island, where another handful of samurai would make history again. Tsushima burned, but the invasion did not pause. Within days, the Mongol fleet regrouped and sailed south again. Their objective was unchanged. Kyushu, but one more island stood in the way. Iki, smaller than Tsushima, less prepared, and defended by barely 100 samurai. Another speed bump, another mistake. Iki had no walls and no standing army. Its defense rested on roughly 100 mounted samurai and local retainers. They were not professionals of war on this scale. They were landholders, hunters, fathers. But they understood one thing clearly. Delay mattered more than survival. The signal fires from Tsushima reached Iki before the fleet. Flames leaped across the water like a message written in fire. There would be no surprise landing, only preparation, resolve, and waiting. At dawn, the horizon filled again. It's the same black and red banners, the same towering ships. To the Mongols, Iki was a stepping stone. To the defenders, it was the last place they would stand. This time the Mongols did not probe. They landed in force, shields locked, drums pounding. Hundreds poured ashore at once, followed by more. Speed would overwhelm resistance before it could harden. Explosive bombs burst against sand and stone. Fire appeared where fire had no right to exist. Horses screamed, in frozen shock. Iki became one of the first Japanese battlefields to feel gunpowder. The samurai did not form lines. They struck in bursts, arrows, sudden charges, flashing blades, then vanished into terrain they knew by heart. It was not victory they sought, it was time. But numbers always return. Wave after wave came ashore. The defenders were pushed back inland. Every loss hurt more when you only had 100 men to begin with. Near the island's center, the remaining samurai gathered. They charged, knowing the outcome. Their role was not to survive, it was to make the invasion bleed. By nightfall, Iki was overrun, villages burned. But once again, the Mongol timetable had slipped. Tsushima, Iki. 2 islands erased, but not wasted. Each hour they resisted traveled south in flame and fear toward Kyushu. Ahead lay Hakata Bay, stone walls, thousands of samurai, and a force no general could command, the weather. Beyond Tsushima and Iki lay Hakata Bay, the true doorway to Kyushu. Unlike the islands, this coast was ready. Stone walls stretched for miles along the shoreline, freshly built under Hojo Tokimun's orders. Thousands of samurai had gathered behind them. For the first time in the campaign, the Mongols would face organized resistance on land they could not simply rush. The Mongol fleet arrived expecting another quick landing. Instead, it found walls, archers, and prepared defenses. Ships anchored offshore. Commanders debated. Delay crept in. The invasion timetable was slipping again. The Japanese refused to wait. Small boats slipped out under darkness. Samurai boarded enemy ships, struck, and vanished. It was not decisive, but it was relentless. Sleep disappeared from the Mongol fleet. Fighting spread across the water. Boarding actions replaced cavalry maneuvers. The Mongols, masters of land warfare, found themselves locked in a struggle they had never perfected. Days passed. Supplies dwindled. Horses remained cramped aboard ships. Disease spread. The longer the fleet stayed anchored, the weaker it became. Then the sky changed. Winds strengthened. Waves grew restless. Autumn storms gathered off Kyushu, indifferent to banners and empires alike. The storm struck without mercy. Ships collided. Anchors dragged. Masts snapped. Vessels broke apart against rocks and each other. The sea became a graveyard. Thousands died without ever drawing a sword. Soldiers and horses vanished beneath the waves. What resistance could not stop, the wind finished. Those who survived fled back to Korea. The invasion of 1274 was over. Japan had not been conquered. The Japanese called it kamikaze, the divine wind. But it was not fate alone. Stone walls, island sacrifices, and constant resistance had forced the fleet to linger long enough for the storm to arrive. The Mongols would return. They would build larger fleets, stronger ships. But they would never forget what Japan had already taught them. This land would not fall easily. 1274 ended in failure for the greatest empire on earth, and the next attempt would be even larger, even deadlier. 7 years later, the Mongol Empire returned, larger, angrier, and determined to erase the humiliation of 1274. This time there would be no improvisation. 2 enormous fleets were assembled, one sailing from Korea, the other from southern China. Together, they carried more than 100,000 soldiers. Japan would not be tested again. It would be crushed. Shipyards worked without pause. Forests fell. Hulls rose by the thousands. Unlike the first invasion, this armada was built for endurance. Larger ships, deeper holds, stronger decks. The Mongols had adapted. They intended to stay until Japan broke. Japan did not wait. Stone walls were reinforced. Samurai trained relentlessly. Coastal patrols watched every horizon. The memory of Tsushima and Iki burned into the national consciousness. This time, no island would stand alone. The Mongol plan required coordination. Korean and Chinese fleets were meant to unite before striking, but distance, weather, and command friction delayed them. Once again, time slipped from Mongol hands. As the fleets waited, Japanese attacks began. Small boats struck under darkness. Samurai boarded ships, killed, burned, and withdrew. It was constant, exhausting, psychological. The Mongols could not sleep. Weeks passed. The Mongols failed to secure a stable foothold. Horses weakened, supplies spoiled, disease spread. What should have been a decisive invasion became an extended siege afloat. In August 1281, the sky darkened, winds rose, waves grew violent. What had happened once began to happen again, on a scale far beyond the first storm. The typhoon struck with catastrophic force. Ships collided, anchors snapped, entire vessels were torn apart. The sea consumed fleets that no army could defeat. Tens of thousands died. Soldiers drowned in armor, horses vanished beneath waves. Survivors clung to wreckage or washed ashore, only to be captured or killed. The invasion ended in chaos. Those who survived fled. The second invasion was over. Japan would never again face a Mongol armada. Storms mattered, but they were not the whole story. Walls delayed landings. Islands bought time. Samurai attacks forced hesitation. The kamikaze struck because resistance made waiting unavoidable. After 1281, the Mongol Empire never again attempted to conquer Japan. Resources were drained, confidence shaken. The sea had drawn a line even empires could not cross. The kamikaze became more than weather, became identity. Proof that resistance, patience, and terrain could humble the greatest power on earth. 2 invasions, 2 failures. Japan remained unconquered, not by luck alone, but by preparation, sacrifice, and time bought in blood.